Well, as Leanne mentioned, the New York Times report details corroborations of another allegation of sexual misconduct against Kavanaugh. Deborah Ramirez, a former Yale classmate, alleges that Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a drunken party and thrust his penis in her face. Last year, Kavanaugh denied those allegations under oath.
Are Ms. Ramirez's allegations about you true?
Those are not. None of the witnesses in the room support that. If that had happened, that would have been the talk of campus in our freshman dorm. The New York Times reported that as recently as last week, she was calling other classmates seeking to, well, I'm not going to characterize it, but calling classmates last week, and just seemed very, I'll just stop there. But it's not true. It's not true.
NBC legal analyst, Danny Cevallos is here with us now. And so, Danny, if these allegations are true, would that have been perjury right there?
If the allegations were true, and more importantly, if Kavanaugh lied under oath, that could be perjury. That could be an impeachable offense. There are two things going on here. Is his conduct from many years ago impeachable? Probably not, because it doesn't involve any official conduct. It doesn't involve anything that was related to his actions as a judge, as an official. But now, if he denies them now as he's being confirmed under oath, does that become an impeachable offense? And remember, at the time, he was still a federal judge on an appeals court. So you don't have any problem with like a purely private citizen, for example, committing perjury and then trying to impeach him later. So if he lied under oath, yes, potentially he could be perjuring himself and it could be impeachable. Remember, President Clinton was impeached in part for perjury, but I think a slight difference there might be that President Clinton's perjury, I think, was provable based on investigations. This, on the other hand, may ultimately never be beyond oath against oath, or maybe even a few different people disputing what Brett Kavanaugh says. Even if that's the case, does it reach perjury such that it becomes something that is impeachable? And remember, it's not a criminal standard in impeachment court. No one really knows what the standard is in impeachment court. But ultimately, it could potentially be impeachable. In all likelihood, that still seems like a long shot. I was going to say, Leanne Caldwell just saying they're already dealing with potential impeachment of the president. Then to add this on top of the pile just seems like a lot. From a legal perspective, it sounds like almost legally there may not quite be enough of a case there. And that's right, because even though there is no burden of proof specifically for impeachment, like there is in a criminal trial, you would have to show that he did lie under oath, and that's the challenge under perjury. Perjury is not merely just saying something false under oath. It has to be intentional, and it has to be material. It has to be something important. It can't just be any inconsistency is an automatic perjury charge. Now, obviously, calling someone a liar who's making accusations against you, that could qualify as perjury. But it is difficult to prove perjury, especially when you're dealing with decades-old allegations. You have to proceed with caution when it comes to allegations like that, whether you're in criminal court or in impeachment court in the Senate. We've all heard impeachment mentioned when it refers to a president. You just referred to President Clinton before. I personally have not heard of impeachment of a Supreme Court justice. Is this something rare? And what would the proceedings there look like? It would look exactly like impeachment of every other official other than the president. It has happened before. Salmon Chase, I don't know exactly how you pronounce it. But many, many years ago, in the modern era, it has not happened. But we have, strangely enough, most of our impeachments, and there have been only about, and I may be wrong, 18, I think, impeachments ever in the United States. But most of those have been federal judges, not Supreme Court judges, but federal court judges. And I think the reason for that is maybe federal judges are perceived as something that if they're misbehaving, they serve for life. So we need to get on that right away and solve the problem. So that could be one reason. That's just conjecture. But yes, we do impeach federal judges, but we have rarely impeached Supreme Court justices. So
If not impeachment right now, per se, what else could come out of this? Could we see an investigation reopened? I mean, what is the likelihood, or what do you expect might come of all of this? Is it much ado about nothing?
I would never say it's much ado about nothing,
Okay.
especially because the allegations are just so serious. But I will say that if there isn't compelling evidence enough to investigate whether or not Brett Kavanaugh lied under oath, and I want to stress that because that may be the only avenue for an investigation.
Okay.
The allegations themselves, so many years ago, any statute of limitations has probably expired. Although in different states, it depends nowadays. The modern trend is to extend the statute for sex crimes. But any statute of limitations is probably out. And I add again that it's pre-office conduct, which makes impeachment very, very difficult to get to.
While we have you here, I want to shift gears for a moment because we know there's another big headline today. Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy as part of its massive settlement for its role in the opioid crisis. We know when companies typically file for bankruptcy, that means they're trying to protect themselves against their creditors. What does this mean for Purdue and for people who are trying to get money out of this company going forward? The
magic of this kind of filing for a company like Purdue is the automatic stay. And the automatic stay means the instant you file that petition, a force field goes up around the company, and all lawsuits are stayed. And that word stay in the legalese means pause, like you hit your pause button on the TiVo.
Can't do anything right now.
No one else, all you folks who have lawsuits, you better get ready to line up because now we're going to figure out, with the limited amount of money we have, who gets what among the creditors. But in the meantime, all of your lawsuits are frozen. They're in stasis. They're in the phantom zone, if anyone gets that reference.
Okay.
But they cannot proceed. That is a tremendous weapon against those creditors, people who would bring lawsuits. And to those states who did not sign on to any settlement, they are very frustrated today because their lawsuits or potential lawsuits are all going to be paused while this thing works itself out.
Oh, goodness. Some big news today, Danny. Thank you for joining us on both Kavanaugh and Purdue Pharma. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.